Well, I think I was excited about the idea, but I think there's just something that can be so ingrained in women and how we are meant to behave and, being a good girl or slut shaming and, just worried about other people's perceptions. I really think that was sort of my limit there. I was worried about that. And so it's actually been such an amazing process to be able to stop and go into that and talk with Liam. And when we'd be fantasizing about me dating somebody, or if we were to connect, intimately, and me connect with another man, Liam would say, "Are you really into this?" And I'd say, "Well, I actually really am, but what would people think? Is this okay?" And then, so there's been a lot of breaking down of like, who are these people that I'm worried about what they think? This is our marriage and this is our journey.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from all over the world to hear their personal journeys of self-discovery through the lenses of love, sex, and relationships.
Our mission is to show people that they're not alone and to inspire them to embrace their true selves so that together we can open minds and live authentically without shame.
We believe everyone's story is powerful and beautiful, yet it's important to remember that everyone does life a little bit differently and that the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we aren't doctors. Please consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 339. We're Finn and Emma, and today we have a wonderful conversation with Abbey and Liam. They are from Australia. They've been together 12 years and exploring non-monogamy for about 10 of those. We have a beautiful conversation today about their journey and how it has changed over time.
Yeah, they actually got their start in New York City.
Yes.
Before they were back in Australia, which is where we talked to them today. But yeah, they kind of got started in sort of the New York City swinging scene. And over the first few years, it sort of evolved and changed. And they've sort of gotten to a place where it's sort of a very fluid dynamic where the relationships with other people really depend on the other people, depend on where they're at in life, depend on the connection. And so we have a great conversation about how they navigate that, how they've navigated this for the last decade, and also about their incredible work.
Yes. Abbey and Liam are the founders of the Evolving Love Project. They do podcast episodes, they have local events, retreats, and writing on Substack. So we encourage you to go check out their website, check out all of their work. It is amazing.
Yeah, they'll talk a little bit more about it later on. But yeah, links to all of their work will be in the podcast show notes. Definitely check it out. Amazing work, incredible people, and we're super excited to bring you all this conversation today.
Yes. For anyone who's a premium subscriber, we're going to jump into the interview with Abbey and Liam now. And for anyone else, we are going to go through a couple of announcements. First up, if you're not familiar with the premium subscription, it's a way to skip these announcements up front, jump right into the interview, but don't worry, you still get important dates in the outro. To sign up, go to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, scroll down on the homepage and sign up there.
Yeah, no important dates this month. I mean, not this week, not this month.
Not this recording.
Well, I will say there was an important date. Last Wednesday was our 6-year anniversary. So
that's true. We just passed 6 years of this podcast. That's amazing.
Just a reminder. And just an extra celebration to us.
Yes, woohoo!
We're going to make this really long so you sign up for that premium subscription.
Incentive.
All right. So the other thing we wanted to tell you besides that premium subscription is about our virtual community. We have just about 300 incredible people from all over the world who join us and join each other all day, every day in a private app, a private forum platform. Again, there's all sorts of amazing stuff going on there. Everything from sharing fun, spicy photos to getting support, navigating your partnerships. This community is open to anybody who is open-minded and amazing. You don't have to be non-monogamous. Maybe you're just looking for open-minded friends. What a great place to find them.
Yes.
To learn more and sign up, head over to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com. Click on the community tab. You can learn more and sign up for $5 a month right there.
And last but not least, we do want to remind you all to check out our favorite way to get tested for STIs. It is called stdcheck.com. You hear us mention it every week because we love this service. It is a service that Finn and I use. It is simple and discreet and just super easy. I guess that's the same as simple.
It's very similar to simple, but it's easier than simple, actually.
It is a really great way to get tested and know your sexual health status. By using the links on the resources page of our website, you get $10 off, making a 10-panel test only $129.
And you also help support the show so we can do this for another 6 years.
Exactly.
So we would love for you to do that. Reminder also to send us an email or send us a voicemail. We would love to hear from you. We'd love to have you come on the podcast. Today's guests do, in fact, happen to be other podcasters, but you don't have to be. You can just be you. We would love to tell your story to the world. So send us an email, send us a voicemail, make it happen. We'll make it happen.
And with that, we will jump into the interview with Abbey and Liam now.
Welcome to the podcast, Abbey and Liam. We're super excited to talk. Also, thank you for getting up early. Every once in a while, we get to do an Australian interview, and either we're up at the crack of dawn or you're up at the crack of dawn, and we're grateful that it's you today. So welcome. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. We're excited to be here, even at 7 a.m. in the morning. We love it.
It's a wonderful excuse to get up early. Thanks for having us.
Yes, we're excited to jump in. We'd love for you two just to start by introducing yourselves.
Yeah, so I'm Abbey. This is Liam. We have been together for 12 years. We've been non-monogamous for 10 years. We're parents to a beautiful little 5-year-old. And, we're just like navigating our journey of non-monogamy. And
yeah, absolutely. And so we started exploring, I guess, around 10 years ago, and we kind of dipped our toes in the waters just kind of initially. And it was mostly theoretical, the way in which we were exploring it. And just it kind of started off in fantasy land. And then, gradually progressed into now where we kind of see ourselves shifting in between different kind of, I guess, polyamorous territory sometimes, or just non-monogamous territory. We've had times where, of course, when Abby was pregnant, we were kind of more of a monogamous setup. But yeah, we see our kind of relationship as very fluid and something that we're always kind of negotiating between the two of us.
yeah, I think we when we were first entering into non-monogamy, we didn't have any of the language around compersion or any of this. We were just so instinct-led and sort of finding our own way. We didn't have any friends that were non-monogamous. And so, yeah, it's been an amazing journey of sort of, discovery together. But it's really interesting. People often ask us, what sort of like category or label are you in? Are you like polyamorous or non-monogamous or swinging? And I don't really know what we fit under. It's quite organic and sort of shifting depending on who we're dating and what the connection is.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think too, for just similar threads for us, we felt a lot of pressure, and I'm curious if you felt a lot of pressure to pick a lane for a while. But it sounds like when you found community, you surrounded yourself in some community, and now it's a little bit more organic.
Mm. Yeah, I think initially the labels were quite helpful, and I think labels can serve some degree of utility just initially in kind of helping you categorize in your mind, like, where are other people who might be similarly kind of thinking about relationships in a similar way. And I think, I guess, we first kind of fell into that more of the stereotypical kind of like swinging thing because it was very physically led for us. Yep. And so we were thinking, okay, let's go on swinger sites. And at that stage, I think we were living in New York and Craigslist was still a thing. And so that immediately started putting us into categories and labels because we had to, go into Craigslist and then say, like, what are we? It's like, are we looking for an MFM? And then we had to figure out what is an MFM? Like, what does it mean if there's an M after the M and then there's the F? It was kind of this crash course in non-monogamy and trying to figure out where the labels sat with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't even know if we'd sort of heard of like non-monogamy specifically at that point. This is 2014. We were just sort of chatting with each other, trying to find our own way. And yeah, I really have a lot of love and tenderness for Abbey and Liam, who were opening up their journey at that point. Because I think in one of our earlier journeys, we actually got catfished as well. But, we have so many interesting stories. It's really funny to think back to them.
Yeah. And did you either of you have any like models or background or exposure to any of this before kind of trying to figure it out yourselves together?
Not initially, not in the very, very early days, but it wasn't after long. I think after we started exploring non-monogamy with, it was actually with a colleague of mine who we were forming a connection with, and she was leaving the work and her job, and so it felt kind of comfortable to connect with her. I didn't have to sort of worry about bumping into her too much. She had a little bit of experience with non-monogamy, so we were able to chat with her and then started the conversations. And then because we were living in New York City, we soon, got Googling, started going to different meetups and things that were happening. I think there was Curious Fox Effie Blue was running some, in-person panel discussions. So we started going to events like that, and that just helped us so much. Yeah. And then we got on to listening to podcasts.
Yeah. Well, what was the initial sort of catalyst that you two just even started digging into the Craigslist and just thinking about opening up to other people in this way?
Yeah, well, we always had a very kind of open line of communication in the way that we talked about sex. I think immediately we felt super comfortable with each other and made each other feel comfortable in just knowing that any conversation was kind of, we were able to explore that, at least just theoretically, if not in practice. So we initially had some conversations around kink. I think was probably our gateway into having these really open and vulnerable conversations with each other. And that somehow just happened kind of straight out of the gate in our relationship. And so we almost had this like beautiful framework for us to start exploring these, these topics of non-monogamy, so that by the time, I think maybe we both confessed to each other, oh, wouldn't it be fun to, have a threesome and maybe another girl in the mix, or because Abby's bi, it didn't feel like too much of a stretch in terms of conversationally to kind of broach these topics and, really just start exploring them just in a fantasy sense, kind of initially.
Just feeling a lot of compersion, but not, like I said earlier, not having the language for it, but just we haven't felt any shame around sort of sharing our desires and our expression, as Liam said. So it all just sort of led in. It was like these topics around, kink, and then feeding into, openness. And we've just always had this, we've always really valued being able to talk to each other about anything, no matter what sort of comes up. That is so important to us. So then, when Liam was like, actually, I do feel really comfortable if you want to, connect with another woman. In fact, I feel really comfortable and actually aroused if you were to connect with another man. Like, that would be a really hot, amazing thing. It was interesting because at that point, I still did have some conditioning around that. So even though Liam was more open for me to be with other men, I still had some of my own, initial kind of resistance to that to sort of break down. And then once I did, I was like, wow, this is really amazing.
But at that stage, when we were first getting into it, we actually didn't have any role models. Going back to your question, Emma, we didn't really have any role models or people that we knew within our life who were at least openly non-monogamous. Now we've come to find that, quite a few of our friends were, I wish everyone had these conversations a little more openly, but we certainly, weren't exposed to our parents were in traditional relationships, whilst we didn't kind of both grow up in like a traditional, Christian or very religious household. We weren't exposed to kind of alternative relationships. Well, I certainly wasn't, with my upbringing. So it was essentially once we'd had those initial conversations, we were really started to look for a sense of community as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. And the dynamic of being able to talk about anything, I think, is so incredibly valuable. And it sounds like, Liam, for you, the walk from talking about everything to doing everything was somewhat of a natural leap to be like, well, we talked about it. I think this would actually be really good. But it sounds like on your side, Abby, there were a few more hurdles you had to clear to actually start talking about it's one thing, doing it's a different thing.
Well, I think I was excited about the idea, but I think there's just something that can be so ingrained in women and how we are meant to behave, and, being a good girl or slut shaming, and, just worried about other people's perceptions. I really think that was sort of my limit there. I was worried about that. And so it's actually been such an amazing process to be able to stop and go into that and talk with Liam. And when we'd be fantasizing about me dating somebody, or if we were to connect, intimately, and me connect with another man, Liam would say, "Are you really into this?" And I'd say, "Well, I actually really am, but what would people think? Is this okay?" And then, so there's been a lot of breaking down of like, who are these people that I'm worried about what they think? This is our marriage and this is our journey. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that's a really hard thing to work through too, because it's natural with society and culture and upbringings and all of the things. Like, I'm curious kind of like, what has been your process in coming through that?
Yeah. So as far as how things practically played out, I think it was, when we started going to these events and meeting other people and just sort of having it be quite normalized that people are dating and connecting in this way was just so incredibly helpful. And, we're in Canberra, Australia. We were, I was raised here. Things were quite sort of by the book, so actually, we were living in New York City at the time and being in that it was like being in another world where, I just could sort of let that go. I felt like the eyes weren't on me. You can get away with a little bit more when you don't have, your best friend from high school, by your side. um, yeah. And so, when we initially did, when I did start dating separately, it was, with another man, it was such a considered thing. And, I did actually go to another friend of mine was in the community, and I said, "Look, I think I'm ready to date." And she actually sort of helped me, meet somebody, and it was really fantastic. We actually have a beautiful friendship with him to this day. And that was in 2016.
Yeah. But an important thing for us was that we gradually entered into everything. We knew initially after those conversations that we were just so excited that we could just completely just go headfirst into the swimming pool of non-monogamy and just kind of get fully immersed. But we were almost kind of gleefully kind of aware of the potential risk of doing something like that, of kind of going full force into something that is obviously very complicated emotionally. So we had those initial conversations where we said, well, maybe we should just really gently kind of move into this. We were already in a really committed relationship, of course, and I proposed pretty early on. I think it was 8 months in.
You did.
Yeah. I was like, I'm locking this in. This is amazing. But yeah, so we had those conversations to kind of just very gradually move into non-monogamy, and we're so thankful for that. And when people ask us, when friends ask us, or of course now we've got a podcast and Abbey writes about it as well, but one of the things that we say is you don't have to do everything all at once. And I'm glad that we kind of took that just instinctually on when we were first starting.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think right, because you said the first sort of things you did were getting into some workshops, checking that out, just sort of dipping your toes in. And then you said this relationship that when you kind of started dating was at least 2 years later. So that was that just to kind of like make sure people caught the timeline there. I mean, that was 2 years of just exploring, opening yourselves up. And I'm curious what those 2 years looked like, because I imagine it wasn't nothing, but it was slow. And I'm curious what slow looked like for the two of you.
Well, there was a lot of it wasn't slow in the sense of the fantasies rolling along. Like we were going deep. Like the pillow talk was pretty wild, in those 2 years. And there's such an energy around that time.
And I would say that, looking back, we would, I think we were having more of connections with women as well, and then exploring being with couples, sort of, what do we call it, in a softer way, sort of moving along in that way. And I think when things really sort of did become a little bit more independent with us was in 2016 with the separate dating. But up until that point, it was more just, like we were connecting with my friend from work. There was actually some long-term friends of ours who were visiting us. We had a connection with them, but we weren't really sort of looking for non-monogamous dynamics. We were more just sort of openly sharing about where we were at, and then sort of things would kind of happen. So, yeah.
We were also writing each other erotic stories.
Yes.
This was like back in the day of like Tumblr,
Oh, we had a Tumblr.
We had a Tumblr. We had a private Tumblr account with a password that we would share. Like, we'd write all these, we'd find Tumblr posts and then repost it and then write this like erotic story underneath it. And so there was just this stream of kind of feeding our desire for something a little bit different outside of the kind of heteronormative relationship scripts, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
What an amazing way to get to know each other, get to learn about fantasies and all of that, even if they just stay fantasies, right? To write those words and know that your partner's going to read them, and then to read knowing that your partner was vulnerable enough to share this. Like, I don't know, I think it's a really bonding, deepening experience.
It was a beautiful way to put our desires out there without putting any pressure on each other. And then we could sort of unpack and discuss the story afterwards. And I'd say, oh, actually, I'd never thought about this before, but that's actually really amazing and hot. And I'd love to explore that. This other thing that you mentioned, like maybe one day, I'm not quite there yet, So.
I mean, some of them have still stayed in fantasy realm. Like we really took the ball and ran with it in a few of those stories. So I think it's really fun. I still actually look back because I'm fastidious about like keeping all this. Like, we have this kind of wonderful history of our relationship through stories and also photos and things that we've sent each other. And I love looking back at those and going, oh, what an amazing like little time capsule into how deviant we are.
I also love that life is long, so we still have time to explore these things if we want to. There's always something yet to explore or revisit or discover.
Yeah.
A couple of years in the future, it's going to be the story gets forwarded again via email, like, hey, maybe it's time.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah.
Also, there was just an element in there that kind of popped into my mind, which was the freedom you talked about being away from home when you first did this. And I find there's just a kind of funny commonality here, which is your first time exploring non-monogamy was coming from Australia to the US, and ours was coming from the US to Australia with our first time. And so we just mirrored each other in that, which is kind of fun. So I
love it.
There is a lot. We talk to a lot of people who are like, we just do it on vacation. We did it for the first time when we got away. There's just something about you're just being somewhere different in the world opens you up to a little bit of adventure and a little bit of possibility.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so in 2016, it sounds like you started kind of dating separately. And I'm curious how that transition went and where does your story go from there?
So that was a really amazing and very exhilarating time. That was definitely the first time that I was completely overwhelmed by NRE. And I just, it just completely knocked me over.
The second time you were completely overwhelmed?
Oh, sorry, Liam. I meant Vivian now. Sorry.
No, I'm teasing. I'm teasing.
Oh, dear. It was really wonderful. And when I met this beautiful man, we actually met him together. And so, it was really important for me at that time for Liam to, have a connection as well, like a friendship. And, we sort of, because we'd been coming from being this couple who really did everything together, it was just sort of the natural thing to meet him together. And he loved meeting you. And we actually had some really amazing times, the three of us. And then, after I think you were really comfortable with him, but I think you were comfortable with him
he's amazing.
Straight away.
Yeah. So it was one of those things where as soon as I met him, I was like, oh, we're best mates. Like, this is great. He was English and I'd lived in England previously. So we were just kind of, talking about England and then there was immediately that sense of familiarity. So it felt really comfortable to then explore something that was very new territory for us in a way that felt really safe.
Seeing the connection between you two just get along as friends was so just freeing for me. And then, I started dating him separately and we were, messaging separately, and all of those things were big firsts for me. I'd never sort of had a one-on-one line of communication with another partner before. And it was just an incredible journey. But that was also my first real sort of step into a more polyamorous space, because he was incredibly polyamorous. He had 2 other girlfriends, and, we went on a double date with him and one of them. And then later on, I met the other one. And the way that they all were, it was like we were really sort of entering into like another space with that. Like it was definitely, it's like we're not really in swinging territory anymore. This is like full blown relationships. This is, there's a lot of different things happening. And it was just really exciting and eye-opening, but also a little bit nerve-wracking, because I'd always been a little bit worried that, with us opening up and being sort of so considered, I never wanted us to sort of open up to the point where we are like really drifting away, or, I just sort of had all of those normal fears that can come up for people when you've been in a monogamous relationship and you are really sort of emotionally entwined with one another. So, as much as there was all of the excitement and the NRE and the passion and the desire and the texting, there was also like a bit of overwhelm and just a bit of fear, because there's not much of a roadmap for me. And this whole time I've always wanted to stay really connected with Liam. So I think at one point there was one day that I started, tearing up to you, because my feelings for him were so big, and I just was quite overwhelmed. And so you sort of supporting me through that.
I think my role in those initial explorations, because I wasn't dating women separately at the time. So we made the decision, because Abby didn't feel comfortable with that yet. And that wasn't really something that I was actively seeking or we were discussing about. It was really new territory for both of us. And I felt that my role within that was just to reassure that our relationship was solid. There was solid foundations. I know you're not going to leave me. It's not an existential threat, the fact that you feel these like really intense emotions. Also, I was kind of really turned on by how hot it was all getting. And I really loved seeing that kind of connection develop and deepen. So it was just a lot of reassurance about that type of thing at that stage.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you touched on that, Liam, because there was a thought that came to mind. Is it sounds like you weren't pushing for this for yourself, that you were at least at this point, saying, "Yeah, this is new, this is big, this is new, right? Even just swinging, that's new and big, and then okay, we're going to start dating separately, and that's big and new, and then the new relationship energy comes like flooding in, and." Yeah, we've been on the new relationship energy roller coaster, and
it's intense.
It is intense, and it is scary to think like, wow, I maybe have never felt something like this before, or I've never seen my partner feel like this, and to think, wow, we might drift away. Like I can totally see where those fears would start coming up for you, Abby.
And I think it's a question of just being brutally honest with each other in a way that makes the other partner feel really comfortable. So I was actually really glad that Abby was so vulnerable and said, look, I'm actually really feeling these full-on emotions. I think it would have been different if Abby felt like, oh, I can't tell Liam how I'm truly feeling. And then I would have started to get in my head, like, is she hiding feelings from me? Like, are we having an honest dialogue? And I think that's a really critical inflection point within any source of new relationship energy when you're navigating that in this kind of non-monogamous landscape, is that as soon as there's a lack of transparency, it can really muddy the waters, and you start to kind of double guess or double think like what your partner might be thinking.
And I love that you touched on that too, Liam, because it feels like it's almost counterintuitive in some ways, of like sometimes the transparency might be a little hard to hear in that moment, and it also provides that security of like, no, we are being honest with each other. She's not hiding these emotions from me. And I'm curious too, like in that process, do you remember having struggles at all on your end with jealousy or insecurities, or for the most part, did you feel pretty secure?
Look, to be honest, I felt actually really secure. I think all of the work that we'd done within our relationship to that point, and the communicativeness of our relationship and how honest we were with each other, I think it really just allowed me just to kind of just sit in that security in those initial explorations. I mean, because people often ask me this, like, oh, you must have felt super jealous, and to be honest, I didn't. And maybe it's a question of programming and you know, like I'm programmed this way in a way that I don't feel as much jealousy. And I've definitely felt jealousy since then. And, you know, there's things that do make me feel jealous. But I think within those initial explorations and the combination of him just being a really beautiful person and him also saying, hey, like, look, if anything gets uncomfortable for you, talk to me. You know, like he was really open and caring and kind with how I was feeling. He wasn't kind of coming and going, I'm going to steal your wife, you know, like, you know, it was not at all that energy. So it actually kind of alleviated a lot of the pathways that could have led to a really jealous kind of experience for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like there's definitely a lot of pieces there that created that environment for both of you to have the experiences you did and to feel the security and remind each other that you're doing this. Well, there's some separateness here. You are doing this together. You're still in your relationship.
Yeah. And going slow, right? Versus, I think that is an easy one to have happen is NRE kicks in and it's like, let's go as fast as we can to the maximum because like the chemicals feel amazing and you're just like swimming in it. And to be able to have a little bit of moderation, it is not easy to do, but powerful.
And the power of the other person too, like the way the other person is showing up and engaging in the dynamic too can make such a huge difference.
Well, I'm happy for the two of you that your first sort of out of the gate experience of diving into the polyamory pool was pretty much fantastic. It sounds like.
Yeah,
it really was.
Yeah, we've been really lucky. Like in all of those initial years, we were just so fortunate, and maybe looking back, it felt really fortunate at the time. Like we just didn't have any bad experiences, but it was also so considered, and we were, I guess, lucky enough to fall into communities where people really cared for each other, and people really valued just honesty and reliability and also kind of vouching for each other's partners. And so it meant that when it came time for Abby, you know, being able to ask her friend like for a recommendation, her going, yeah, I've got this guy, he's amazing. It was almost like this beautiful kind of directory of awesome non-monogamous people that we can draw on. And it really speaks to the privilege of having a community to draw upon, because some people aren't fortunate in the ways that we were. You know, they might be living in a rural town in South Australia and they know no one and they don't have that fortunate ability to be able to draw on their friends or find other non-monogamous people because the pool is so small. And then they actually run into problems where they might not have the perfect situation, but they're going, is it perfect enough for us?
Yeah. Can we round it up? Yeah. 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 It's very real. And we've seen that so much. And it's hard because you feel for people and you can't blame anybody, right? If you're sitting there going, I feel this about myself, and maybe one person's feeling it, the other one's not, or two are, whatever it is. And everybody's like, well, this is good enough. This is as close as we're going to get because the closest people live, hundreds of miles or kilometers away. And it's just like, we're not going to make that. We can't do it, And yeah. Well, I'm grateful. I'm glad to hear that you two found the right communities. And just to be clear for anybody listening, when you say the directory of amazing people, that wasn't necessarily Craigslist was the directory. That
no connections and almost like references through friends, but without it saying so, professional. But just even from that point, after I was connecting with him and then, a little bit later on through our journey, just for me having a really lovely network of female friends, and then, there was another point where I was ready to meet somebody else. And, I spoke to another really close friend of mine and she was like, this is my, I actually have a lover and I'd love for you to meet him. I think that you two would really get along. From that point, I think we were so lucky. We actually hadn't gone on any apps, or we hadn't really been we had our initial sort of Craigslist disaster. We never actually met anybody from Craigslist, but we had that situation, and then everything from there was very in person, and then it was just very organic that we would as Liam said, it was like everything was kind of a recommendation and from such a beautiful, heartfelt place as well. And I think one of the other very important things was we became really good friends with another couple who were just like maybe they'd been exploring non-monogamy for perhaps 10 years longer than we had. And we saw a lot of ourselves in them. And even at that point, they were more open than we were, but they were still so connected as a couple, which has always been so important for me to just keep that connection with one another. And so it was really incredible. I mean, looking back, it was almost like they were our mentor couple, but they were our friends. And we were sort of also sexual with them and had a dynamic with them too. But just having just good people who are really solid and kind to just share their experiences just meant the world to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And that, just for a time frame, that was after you had started dating separately too?
Yes.
Yeah. Just to have that connection, to have that community is really powerful.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the reference is to say this can work, right?
Yeah.
10 years on, we could be here potentially, right? Is it a guarantee? No, but we also have at least one point of reference that this could be us.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And it also speaks to the power of just sharing stories openly. And this is something your podcast does so incredibly. And obviously you have such a history now of sharing everyone's approaches being differently, being different to non-monogamy. And it's so important that people can hear something of themselves in the stories that are being shared. And of course, for the stories to be shared, they have to be available to be shared either in person, or now we have the privilege and fortune of having podcasts easily accessible. There's lots of books written about this. Obviously, non-monogamy is going through its own cultural zeitgeist moment at the moment. But you guys have been talking about this forever, and lots of people have been talking about this forever. But it's just so important to if you do have the privilege to feel comfortable in sharing your story, is to allow people a chance to be able to see that there is, if you're that way inclined, there is a different way of having a relationship.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that, Liam. That is one of the things that we have really seen out of this show is every single episode, somebody relates to something in there. And there's, we gave up early on trying to be like, because sometimes we would do an interview like, well, that one, we aren't sure about that one. We're a little worried about it. And we get more feedback out there like, oh, that was the most amazing. And then we do one that was like, that one blew our minds and then crickets. And we're like, okay, well, it still blew our minds. And we know it had to have blown other people's minds. But it's just that idea that there's a little bit of something for everybody out there. And when you start to share who you are, you start to call in the people who relate to you.
And non-monogamy really speaks, for me, it really speaks to the humanity of people. And it allows us a gateway to meet so many incredible people that we would not have a chance to meet or hang out with. We run conversation circles in Canberra for non-monogamous people and in Sydney as well. But we're in a room often with people, from the army, who are lawyers, who are doctors, or, from a huge range of professions, of backgrounds, of ages. And there's such an incredible opportunity to be able to spend time with people and have these conversations. And often people within a non-monogamous mindset or framework, or people who are open to non-monogamy, are also open to having conversations that go deep really fast. And it's something that I've seen as a pattern. Because there's no need for surface level. It's like, okay, like I don't care what car you drive, I don't care, about what house you own or what neighborhood you live in. Like, let's talk about relationships. Let's talk about, vulnerability. Let's really just kind of dive in. And non-monogamy just really opens that door, I think.
It definitely speeds up friendships, even just platonic friendships as well. We have an amazing community of, non-monogamous friends, and they're not people that we're not dating, we're not sleeping with them. We don't have that dynamic, but just as Liam said, being able to talk about all of these things, it really fast tracks and deepens the friendship in a way that is just, it's so beautiful.
And I mean, even talking to you guys, it's like I feel like we're best friends. Like if you weren't the other side of, across the other side of the world, I'd be like, oh, let's catch up for a beer. This will be, this will be great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we were talking before we jumped on that our Australia tour is just about due, so we're don't count it out.
At some point, it will happen. It will happen.
I just wanted to just speak to that too, because I think what you're talking about, they're going deep, and the other side of that coin, I think, and I don't want this to be like a negative piece, is just I think it also shows you quickly who you do mesh with and who you don't, and so you're not. I don't want to say wasting time, but so you're not spending time wondering, are these people our people? Are we going to mesh if we go a little deeper? But all we do is talk about the weather and the sports game and the whatever the surface level du jour is. But we know pretty quick we're probably not going to have a great time if we got deep with these people, because we went deep a little, didn't go great. We can be surface level friends, and to me it's like a really fast and powerful sorting mechanism for where do I want to put my energy. And not that those people are wrong, but we just don't vibe. We just aren't a good fit for each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, it's funny because often we get asked like, "Oh, are you only friends with non-monogamous people now?" And it is a really powerful question if you kind of really dig deeper into it, because to honestly answer that question, a lot of our closest friends are actually non-monogamous now, because we've developed such a really deep and caring connection where we know so much about their lives and they know so much about our lives, is that sometimes going back into a context that isn't necessarily with non-monogamous friends, it can feel so surface level that it starts to lose its shine of interest. And I don't want to use the word boring because that's probably too strong, but it feels like there's a lack of energy in the hang and the lack of energy within those relationships in a way that there feels like such a sense of newness and aliveness and possibility with people who are non-monogamous. As Abby said, we're not necessarily in sexual relationships with any of these people, but even just the sense of like we're all kind of discovering the world together. Like we're all moving into the world in this kind of brilliant way of just I guess aliveness.
Yeah. Well, I think that is so relatable, and the nuance there is are most of our friends non-monogamous? Yes. Are we non-monogamous with most of our friends? No. And there's a big difference there, because I think what happens when you can be vulnerable early on is, hey, I'm into this, this, and this. What are you into? Well, I'm into this, this, and this. Well, there is no overlap there in terms of maybe the things that we could do together. But why can we not just be amazing friends? We can be friends who are all non-monogamous and do nothing other than the same things that the monogamous people do, right? But we now know, and there's no more wondering, because we just put it all out there vulnerably on the table, laid our cards out, and decided this is the right way for us to be friends.
And just go for it, Abby. And I want to build on that.
Say, just having that shared understanding with other people, and just people to, share with, if I'm, having a non-monogamous connection or a new lover or partner, or if Liam is, and being able to share that with friends and just say, oh, I'm really excited because I'm going to be meeting somebody, and, having somebody, look back at you going, wow, that's awesome. That's so great. As opposed to like, oh, is everything okay? Having cheerleaders.
And it's not that we also, not to misrepresent our kind of relationships, it's not like we're always talking about non-monogamy with our non-monogamous friends.
Totally. Totally.
It's like, we're often playing into those classic like non-monogamous tropes of like, oh, we love rock climbing, like let's all go hiking together. And it's like, there's so many beautiful shared interests, but it does come under the umbrella of us all also being able to talk about non-monogamy.
Yeah.
I also think like I love this conversation, and also I think it's more almost like an openness and transparency in the conversation. And so I know we're kind of labeling like non-monogamous and monogamous people, but for me, like, as long as if I can have that level of openness with somebody and transparency and honesty in that connection, like, and they're choosing to be in a monogamous relationship because that works best for them, cool. But if I can have that friendship that's like, that takes the walls down, and I can be truly myself. That's really like really what matters, right? And I think that what you two have found in your connections, as you're talking, like, you found that connection, and most of your friends are non-monogamous because you can relate at that level.
Yeah.
Well, sharing our stories becomes so important for finding our own community. We moved back to Canberra at the end of 2019. So coming back to Canberra with a 1-year-old was such a shock to the system, in so many ways. I mean, of course, we moved home when just before a major bushfire happened, and right before COVID, of course, it was a really intense time. But, initially coming back and reconnecting with some of the friends that I had before being in this non-monogamous journey with Liam and the life that we'd had, it was actually, I think of it as like Narnia, and then coming back out of the closet, into the spare room and just being like, did that happen? Was that a dream? Am I allowed to sort of be myself again? And being in these connections with these, lovely women who are also mothers, and some women who I'd known for a long time, but they just didn't know me in that way. And just taking that step to think, if I want to deepen this friendship, if I want to, feel really authentic here and loved for who I am, I'm actually going to have to start to be honest about who I am and some of my perspectives and what we're about, and so, just sharing with friends was such an important thing. And it did actually give us the opportunity to find people who we were more in connection with, because naturally when you do come out as non-monogamous, people can self-select themselves in and out of your life. And I'm really glad that we were more honest with that. And, I started to write about it, and it was a really interesting journey, actually, sort of moving back and coming out as non-monogamous.
Yeah, and I think that proves some of the point of like the people don't have to be non-monogamous, but as you start to share that part of your life, the other deep parts of your life, and that's something we've seen is we can talk about the non-monogamy, but we can also talk about the deep things that are just us, or maybe traumatic things that have happened, things that we just have a little more like, I feel like I could share this with these people. And when you can share that and the other people are like, hey, cool, I'm not non-monogamous, but like I just absorbed what you shared. I held the space with love and connection and support and honesty. Right? That's all we're looking for. I think that's all of any of us are looking for is, can we be accepted by the people around us? And they don't have to be non-monogamous to accept and support us in this piece, because it's not all of who we are. It's part of who we are.
Yeah, that's totally true. We received a really beautiful message the other day from someone who listened to a recent podcast episode that we did, and she said, hey, I'm actually monogamous, but I find it's so beautiful hearing you guys talk so openly about communication. I've taken so much from these discussions and the concepts around non-monogamy that I'm actually taking back to my monogamous relationship. And I think that is the most powerful way to be able to do monogamy. I think the most healthy versions of monogamy, and we're certainly not out here being everyone should be non-monogamous. Let's all go to swingers parties and have orgies and all these things. It's like it's actually, you just have to have a conscious decision to be monogamous or non-monogamous, and then there might be times, as we mentioned earlier, there might be times where you do go through periods of monogamy, you do go through periods of non-monogamy, but that openness is something that should kind of oscillate throughout your relationship, irrespective of the dynamics.
Yeah. Yeah, the openness to learn and grow and expand your mind. Just be open to expansion.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'm curious where, when you two landed back in Australia 2019, what did things sort of look like at that point, right? Abbey had been, sounds like, dating individually. Where was sort of your journey at, Liam? And throughout all of this, were you still both going out together to events or dating together as well?
Yeah, well, so as Abbey mentioned, we had been in New York and we had this incredible kind of community that we'd built up, and we had such wonderful friends. And when we moved back to Canberra, we quickly realized that a lot of our friends had moved out of town. So we didn't really have that sense of kind of non-monogamous community within Canberra. So we initially started to kind of reach out, and we used one of the dating sites in in Canberra. And we managed to kind of build a sense of community. And that's where we started to kind of have those initial explorations when we were back. And at that stage, I wasn't dating separately.
Well, you did actually start dating in New York.
That's
separately.
True. Oh,
you did.
My memory fails
of,
me.
Yeah.
I switched. I switched it around. Can I blame the early morning start? Is that?
Of course.
Yes, of course.
Yep.
Oh my goodness, the narrative.
Yeah. Liam actually did start dating separately. I think it was in 2019.
So how very wrong I was in my recollection. Thank you for pulling me up on that. Otherwise, we're gonna have people reaching out, being like, "What's going on with this timeline? This is crazy."
and that was really interesting because I have sort of different levels of security and a different sort of expression of compersion to Liam. My compersion's always been I sort of like to be part of what's happening, and I think maybe I'm a little bit more of the kind of controlling one, so that I've sort of had to move through that. But I think from having my own experiences and still having that deep ongoing love for Liam always did actually give me some more security and trust that if Liam does start dating, he's not going to run off with somebody else. So you did start dating in 2019, and then when we moved back to Canberra with the 1-year-old, we were sort of everything. It was almost like going back to the beginning a little bit online. Also feeling a little bit nervous about being in Canberra as well and being out because, even though Liam has said, a lot of our friends had moved out, we still knew a lot of people in Canberra, and it's not a very large place.
And our parents live here as well.
Our parents live here. My parents knew that we were non-monogamous, but Liam's family didn't know about that. And so we just, didn't want to bump into my mother-in-law if I'm out on a date, or for, us to be in a restaurant, with another woman and, bump into the work colleague or something. So we actually started with our online profiles. We were dating people who lived in Sydney. But the hilarious thing was that we were meeting people who lived in Canberra who were doing the same thing.
So everybody shows up for the date. Like, we just drove 3 hours to get here. Like, oh, well, where'd you come from? Like 3 minutes from your house, actually.
Yeah.
We could have carpooled here.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you started going. I mean, now it's a real big investment. Sounds like a time investment to do this, right? If you're having to go a few hours away to have experiences, how did that go, and where did that take the two of you?
Well, there is a lovely town in between Canberra and Sydney called Barrel.
Yeah. I think it was a meet halfway type situation. And I think that was how we kind of initially did it. We'll go, we'll meet in the middle. But as Abby mentioned, we were matching with people who actually were in Canberra. So I think eventually we just thought, okay, let's just say we're in Canberra. Let's just own this, and we'll just go out. And then, it just appears that we're hanging out with, friends, like, especially when we were dating couples and stuff. It was very clear that, it could go either way, I think when Abby, I remember Abby going on an initial date with a guy separately and kind of feeling a little nervous.
In Canberra?
Yeah, in Canberra. Feeling a little nervous that, someone would text my mum or something and be like, hey, I don't know if I should tell you this, but we just saw Abby, like, maybe you should tell Liam. Like, there was all these kind of fantastical, hypotheticals of someone interrupting you guys making out or something at the bar.
The good girl, perfect daughter-in-law in me was just like freaking out,
It was also kind of hot, like there was an erotic charge in that as well.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll be caught,
Yeah, the risk. Yeah.
Yeah. But then I started to feel more comfortable with it because I just started to really own it and to share it with the people in my life. And we did tell our families, and I started to write about non-monogamy. Actually, I had a private Instagram page called Evolving Women Project that was for my friends, and they could share it with friends of friends, sort of sharing non-monogamous perspectives. And as that sort of grew, I figured, this is really hot gossip in a pretty small place. People are going to know. I'm just going to own it. It's okay, So that sort of helped, and that was another big kind of vulnerability stretch. But yeah.
And that was also how we kind of eventually had to come out to my parents as well, is because we started a podcast, and then we were like, oh no, there's just no way they're not going to hear about this. And you're writing, I think at that point you you had your face in your pictures.
Mm.
But there was these kind of discussions with the new Instagram page that we now have, which is Evolving Love Project, was like, is Liam going to show his face? Like, are we going to be publicly non-monogamous rather than privately non-monogamous? And so that was the kind of inflection point where we said, okay, got to tell my parents, and they were beautiful about it. And my sisters had known for a long time, but that was kind of when we were just like, okay, secrets out, small town, we'll just be those people, just wandering down the street, wondering if people know. And certainly now, that's definitely, we were on national TV recently, and they filmed like a mini doc on us, and so even at school pickup, we're like, we're seeing some of the parents go, I think I saw you on TV the other night.
Yeah, always wondering who knows. That's my big thing at the moment. I'm like, who knows at school pickup and drop off? Everyone's really friendly. Everything's good.
Yeah.
But I have got a few messages. There was like one mum who I really didn't know that well, and she sent me a message and was like, I think she'd heard us on another podcast, a big Australian women's podcast, and she was like, I just heard you on there, like had no idea. Good on you guys. Like how eye-opening. And I thought, okay, good. The mum's at school. This is being received well.
I'm so glad that's been the experience, right? That it is just, maybe not everybody, but a lot of love and support and open arms and welcoming. And to be in a small town like that is, right, you don't have to hide. You get to be you.
Well, that's it. We are in a really privileged position to be able to be out about being non-monogamous and to talk about it. And I think that's part of the reason why we want to share about it as well. We can talk about it, so we do.
Yeah. But also, I don't want to paint it like it was like this rosy scenario where we came out and then everything was like perfect. Like when we did, it's called The Project, and it's on Channel 10 in Australia. And when we did that episode, the pushback online was like insane from people outside of the non-monogamous community. Like there were thousands of comments, these people are the worst people. They shouldn't be parents. They should.
Satan's puppets, I think.
Yeah. I think my favorite comment was on Facebook, and someone said, this guy looks like Jesus, but without the morals. I thought that was good. I was like, oh, that's at least a little bit witty, but it went from kind of witty to like really, Abbey has an amazingly thick skin for these types of things. I think I'm less so inclined that way, and I had to really kind of process a lot of the negative reactions from the public on large, even though, I knew logically speaking that, these people, they have their own things that they're working through, hurt people, all those like common tropes that you can like run through to make yourself feel better. But when you're seeing like thousands of comments roll in, just being like, these people are awful people, I was starting to be like, oh, wow, this is.
Yeah. It was a lot. I think we definitely stopped reading the comments after a while.
You did, yeah.
Especially, as parents, we were really being attacked because we're parents, and there was a lot of like, what kind of a mother is she, and what a terrible person, and I could never, to do that, and I'm a mom and all this stuff. And I think that can be where it hurts. Parenting is something that we care so much about. We pride ourselves in our parenting. And so, that's never a nice thing. But I mean, of course, people are going to come for that, straight away. That's an old story if people are, if they're gay or queer parents, and, well, what about the children? Or if they're, back in the day, interracial couples, like it's, it's just sad, really.
Yeah. Yeah, the only acceptable model of being a parent is one man, one woman.
Nuclear family.
Right. Otherwise, your kids will be traumatized forever and ever and ever. And yeah, I'm curious how it has been for the two of you raising, you from basically from birth, right? You have been non-monogamous for your kiddo.
Yeah. I would say that being non-monogamous gives us such a spark, and really has helped so much with our communication, that when it has come to parenting, there can be so many sort of things that you have to navigate within your relationship and how you're going to approach things, or, emotional moments or triggered moments. There's so much of that can happen. And I think actually the fact that we are non-monogamous has helped us so much with our parenting. And it's also, we have it in our minds that, we are we are parents, yes. We also have a marriage, and we also are individual people as well, and we do have other aspects of ourselves. And so, honoring those aspects and feeling like whole, full people who are happy and who are open just in general to the world brings that sense of happiness back into the home. But as far as having to navigate anything, non-monogamy with our child, to him, we are that sort of nuclear family. Like, he doesn't know any different. He just has like mum and dad. And when he's not with us, he's with either one of his grandmothers, but we're with him a lot. He's never met anybody as sort of a partner. Of course, he's met different, people that have been lovers and everything. But to him, that he would just know them as friends. He's 5. So everything is like age appropriate. Like, we're not explaining to him about non-monogamy or relationships or anything. We're talking about being a good person and telling the truth. And, you have different friends and you don't need to have a favorite. You can love who you love, and, just being open-minded parents. And he has an auntie who's in a very serious committed relationship with another woman. That's all normal to him. Kids just take on what they're fed, really. He's a sponge. So he's just like a happy and loving child.
Yeah. I love the way you just explained that, because it's just normal. Like, it's just normal, but people don't, like, they can make up all of the stories and all of these things. And yet on a day-to-day life, like, he's just growing up as a kid, and you're parenting him and in the way that you feel is the best. And what else, like, is there to do? Like, that's the best to do.
I think so much of the pushback on it can be because there's such a misunderstanding around non-monogamy. It's like, well, if you're non-monogamous, that means that you're like out of control. Your home is a sex party. You've got no boundaries. You let anything happen. You let anyone walk into your home at any moment, and it's just not the way that it is. Like, it's just couldn't be further from that. And so, people might think, oh, because they just let anything go, they'd let anything go with their child, or they're not going to be caring parents, or they're distracted or anything. And it's like, we are such present parents. We do all of the things that a regular family does. We go to the playground, we go to the swimming pool, we go hiking. We have all of these beautiful, vanilla experiences, but they're so joyful for us. We do have that aspect of us as well. We are just this wholesome, cute family that does all of the wholesome, cute family things, and we love that.
Yeah. I just had like, as you're saying that, like, my brain is just over here writing a TV show that is the everything you don't see in Bluey, right? So every time mom's there and dad and the dad's not, then you write the other one and he's out on a date, and then he's there playing, whatever, feather wand, right? And she's off on a date. Like, if you could write the parallel to be like, no, this was a normal, quote unquote, normal family, and it was happening, and nobody knew it was happening, and the kids are happy, and everybody's happy.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting that you bring up Bluey. I don't know if you follow any of the dramas that have been happening with that recently, but one of the writers put it, so the mum and dad have the bedroom, put a chair in the room facing the bed, right? Just added a chair to the bedroom. And then everybody was like, what's happening? There's a cuck chair in the bedroom.
Oh my God.
And, all of this stuff. And I can't remember what the update is on it, but I think the writer might have been.
I think he responded to to this kind of like discourse, because it became all these memes and like, it was truly hilarious. And it was just funny, like, seeing like people make their own judgments based on this chair being in the room.
But to me, I was like, yeah, get it. Like, live your life. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
Still great parents, still awesome, still doing all of the things. Who cares if there's a chair in the bedroom?
Who cares if there's a whole stadium in the bedroom, right? Maybe that's their thing.
Exactly.
There's some bleachers people like to pull up and watch. Like,
that's it.
It's all like, yeah. I mean, I don't know, this whole thing around like what is actually normal comes up for me. And like, it's all about just being a good human and being there for your kid and parenting in the best way possible, and introducing people as it makes sense, and like taking like thinking through things, not doing things impulsively, that type of thing. Like it just, yeah, that, I don't know. I don't
Got
know
you
where,
fired up.
yeah, I don't know where I was
Yeah.
going with that
Yeah.
other than just like, it just feels unfair. It feels unfair to
Well, I think, I think that question of like what is normal, I think we can actually strive and use non-monogamy as a good framework for striving towards what what normal should be, which is really just acceptance, kindness, open-mindedness, being accepting of people who live differently to you. Like, we're not making value judgments on people who are religious or people who are monogamous or anything like that. We're just saying, as long as you are kind people, as long as you are caring and you treat other people with respect and value inherently, then that's what normal should be. Not like normal is a monogamous relationship, 2.3 kids or whatever the current statistic is. Like that doesn't need to be normal. Normal just needs to be a base level of compassion.
Yes, I love that. I love that.
And even to argue with ourselves, normal doesn't need to be non-monogamy, right? It's just relate to the other people in your world in the way that feels good to you, feels good to them, and everybody's agreeing to.
Exactly. And they're the values that we want to teach our son. Some people have said, would you ever be worried that he would, get bullied? And, to me, it's like, well, I hope that the families of other children who would be bullying, like it would be sad to me. For me, the sad situation is a child who has been taught to prejudice against another child, or an adult in a family having that prejudice, not inviting a child to a birthday party or something like that because of their parents. I mean, that's a pretty closed off place to be within yourself. And, I think we can do better with that.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I think the contrast that you two experienced from living and growing this sort of bubble around yourselves in New York, and then you come back to Australia and you go on TV or you go on other shows, and then you see the comments and it's like the bubble gets popped. You're like, oh shit, like those other people do exist. Like there is the bubble, but there's also outside the bubble, and it is a rude awakening some days.
Yeah, and I'm naturally I want to engage with those people directly. Like
I want to argue with them all.
Yeah,
day.
and it's interesting, and sometimes for me, it's not even a question of like it's not like I want to win, but I want them to understand that what we're doing is ethical, and the way that we approach things is ethical. And often I see a lot of the discourse on Instagram, and there's certain people kind of really pushing like this is, even with non-monogamous concepts, like this is how you do it ethically, and if you don't do it like this, then you're not ethical. And I think we get into such a there's such a moral like minefield as soon as we start to look at these things and kind of like binary codes of like this is how you do it, this is how you don't, because there is so many ways of approaching things that are ethical for the people within them and that treat other people, with respect. So as soon as I read these comments just being like, oh, like even from non-monogamous people who, now that Abbey has a big profile with the Evolving Love Project, it's like, occasionally we'll get comments or she'll get comments saying like, I'm non-monogamous, but it's disgraceful how you like you talk about like having a threesome with another woman or something like that. And it's like, well, that inherently in and of itself isn't unethical because everyone's being treated with respect, and the woman's being treated with respect, and where
Like,
it's wild to me.
Exactly. Like if everybody's happy and having a good time, it's like also, if we're connecting with somebody, it's like not everybody wants to join our marriage. Like there are people, it is possible that there are people who are like, happy to, connect with us in a way that's also within their bandwidth or capacity and all of that. So yeah, being open-minded across the board that we are all different, it just makes complete sense. I mean, there are approximately 8 billion people on the earth. Surely there's not one way to do it in a non-monogamous sense or a monogamous sense.
Yeah.
Well, we couldn't agree more with that statement.
Yes.
Yeah, and just a ton of gratitude to both of you for coming on and sharing your story and for the work you do. And I want to interrupt here and give you a chance to talk a little bit more about your project, your podcast, and the way that you're normalizing and bringing this into the world for yourselves as well. And then I had one or two other questions, and then we can let you get along with your day. But I know we'll be back doing this again because I don't think this was a complete conversation. I think there's so much here that we could talk about.
Oh, absolutely. So our podcast is called the Evolving Love Podcast. We just have one on, episodes where we're just talking with each other. We also interview really, wonderful people and also people with differing views as well on the topics of non-monogamy. We sort of don't want to stay in a bit of an echo chamber. We recently had a biblical scholar, on our podcast talking about non-monogamy and his views. And it was such a beautiful conversation and very respectful. And so that's the Evolving Love Podcast. I also have a Substack, the Evolving Love Project, where I write sort of, longer form articles and, really get into the emotional kind of weeds of like, being non-monogamous and being a mom and, having these jealousy and all of the things that can come up, when you are sort of navigating from a very sort of, initially a monogamous marriage into the, on the journey of opening up. So yeah. And we do have, if you are in Australia, we do have conversation evenings in Canberra and in Sydney. And
you are hosting a retreat,
I am, a
women's retreat as well.
Yeah. My second women's retreat will be in May in New South Wales in the Yass Valley.
Amazing.
Yes. And links to everything you just said will be in the show notes.
Thank you so much. It has been incredible chatting with you guys. You guys are so amazing and it's lovely to meet you. And of course, we've listened to so many of your episodes. And so it's just wonderful. We feel so familiar with you guys. So yeah, it's been very easy.
I think that's why we're best friends already. It's like,
yes,
we think we're best friends.
Yeah, we've already got a parasocial relationship with you. It's like, oh yeah, Emma and Finn, they're coming around for, a tea this morning. It's great.
If we were closer, only if we were closer.
What we would be doing is getting Tim Tams, and we'd be scarfing Tim Tams.
Exactly.
So, we had a member of our community send us two containers of every flavor that was out like 2 Christmases ago, and we're just about through them all, and it's been like we're sweating a little. We're running out of Tim Tams. Our supplies low.
Okay, well, let us know.
We need to send them. Tim Tams are the best. Nothing beats a Tim Tam.
Amazing. Well, would you two be open to one more question before we let you go?
Oh, of course. Yeah,
Please.
yeah.
So knowing that you know us, bloopers are a big part of this show, and we would love if you have 1 or 2 or 5 that you want to share openly with the world that help us understand that this is also really funny and doesn't always go as well as we want it to.
Yeah. So I guess a big blooper for us was that we downloaded Field for the first time when we were in America, and we were going down on a trip to Nashville, and we thought, oh, okay, we'll use Field to meet like a couple that will be really, be really exciting. We'll have an Airbnb. So we download Field, we go down to Nashville for this wedding. But we managed to download Field kind of not with any foresight, in that we'd need to download it before we actually arrived there. So we ended up connecting with a couple that were arriving a few days later after we actually left.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was such a funny situation. We then we're chatting with them, and we were so new to online dating because we'd been, with our community in New York of friends and lovers, and it was hilarious. We got to the bar and we'd organized this time to meet, and then they just didn't show up for so long, almost an hour, and we thought we were definitely being catfished. And I started looking around the bar, and I saw a man sitting in the corner, and he was on his phone, and he was sort of looking at me, and I was going, Liam, it's definitely him. It's definitely this guy. We're being catfished.
I was getting paranoid as well. I was like, yeah, that guy does actually look like he has been on his phone this whole time. And the couple that we were supposed to meet they were kind of sending us these messages that seemed kind of like they were just so fantastical. They were like, oh, we had to go to a funeral that was really last minute, and then the funeral was running late, and then there were other excuses, and then it became like this like I think it was about 90 minutes, and we had made the decision. We were like, okay, we're going to give them 15 more minutes, Like, this is truly insane. We're going to give them 15 more minutes to rock up. Otherwise, we're just going back. And incredibly, the story ends positively because they walked through the door and we were like, oh my God.
They're
like,
real.
They're real. And we were so close to leaving.
I'm by this stage trying to catch eyes with this poor man who was giving me weird looks because I'm giving him death stares, trying to smile at him, like, we're cool. Like,
and I was like saying to Abby, like, maybe like, maybe like hold our reservations like that he is the catfish. Like, Abby was about to like call the police, like at the whole, no, she wasn't about to do that. But it was really a wild situation of just kind of like, because we'd had friends in the past who had genuinely been catfished. And so we had just become so paranoid that we're like, this is the moment that we get catfished.
Yep.
And so, for them to then come through the doors, and then he managed to break, like he was so nervous because they were so late, and they had a genuine reason why they were so late, but he was so nervous that he sat down at the bar, and he was like he was a firefighter. He was like this big guy, and, like super strong. And he picked up his glass and then managed to like nervously smashed his glass everywhere,
all over the table as soon as he sat down. And he was just like, oh my gosh, like, we're over an hour late. I'm smashing the glass. It was a hot mess.
It was a hot mess. And then it got to the hot part at the end of the night. So it was a fantastic ending to it, but it was truly a nerve-wracking.
And we're still really great friends with those people to this day.
Yeah.
What a roller coaster ride.
I know.
Yeah, right?
I know.
Yeah.
Amazing.
The journey.
Well, I give you two a lot of credit for your patience. We can relate. There's been a lot of times where we've stuck around way too long.
Right?
And you're just like, what? Sometimes, in many of those, we would like, we realized we should have left and they didn't pan out as lovely as yours did. But you're just riding home and you're like, why did we just wait 2 hours or whatever? Why did we do this? What are we thinking? But it's part of the adventure. I don't know. We get to talk about it now. And
exactly. It's just part of the story.
And then you're also there in the bar just like having a date with each other. So it's like, you kind of win-win either way. And then as you said, you kind of get this story at the end of it. It's like, wasn't that weird that, they didn't show up? But it's also it's a funny thing because it's like, you are obviously very busy people as well. And sometimes to like carve out calendars and to make it happen is just so insane. So then for someone to like not show up, it's kind of like, it's got to be a pretty good
boiling.
It's got to be a pretty good reason,
Yeah.
Yeah. We we'll share. I want to share one really quick because it's made me think of this. We met. This couple wanted to meet us. We wanted to meet. We met them on like a swinging website, and this is going to make us sound like snobs, and we're really not, but they wanted to meet at TGI Fridays. Okay. And that's probably not where we would eat on most regular. We don't eat at fancy places, but TGI Fridays isn't our jam. But they're like, we really want to meet there. We're like, okay. So I'm the person who has to be there really early, and we get there early, and we're waiting. And then we start getting the like, we're just about to leave. Okay, we're walking out the door. Okay, we're in the car. We're like 10 minutes away. Okay, we're hit a bunch of traffic. Oh, we're not going to be able to make tonight. Sorry, something came up. And at this point, we were waiting. And then they're like, okay, we're on our way. So we like ordered an appetizer and got a table. And then like we get all settled in and they're like, oh, we're not coming. And I was like, I just wanted to throw the appetizer on the floor and walk out. I was so frustrated. I was like, we would have had an evening. And then now we're sitting here eating the whatever from TGI Fridays. And
moral of the story, just be transparent.
Yes.
Just tell people like, hey, something came up and I can't make it tonight, but tell them that earlier. Like,
exactly. As soon as you know.
I mean, the coolest thing in that is that they said they were coming. So you think you're like, you're really on the roller coaster with them, and who knows what's happening on their end, that maybe they're having like arguments and, all these things are kind of like, it's getting weird on their end, but they're still dangling this carrot, that you're chasing as you run down the street. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, well, when we catch up, we'll have to maybe go to McDonald's or something.
No.
Sounds great. Yeah.
But also, I just want to say as well, thank you so much for all the work that you do. I've been a huge fan of your podcast for so long. I remember listening to your podcast on a flight to New York when
we were listening to it together.
Yeah, we were listening to it together and comparing notes. And it's just the work that you do is incredible, and it's so powerful. To be able to share stories and to platform people's stories, and the way that you present everything with so much support and just no judgment. I think it's really incredible that you're offering your voice and the voices of others to the community. So a real big thanks. So it's a real privilege to be on the podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liam.
Incredibly sweet. Yes.
Well,
and I'm so grateful that you did have those opportunities to listen and bond over that. That was exactly what, some of what we're trying to do and put out there. So, thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you guys so much.
And thank you for being here, for coming on again in the future, and for all the work you do. So maybe with that, we'll let you get along with your Sunday afternoon.
Morning.
I guess we haven't been talking that long, have we?
We started at 7 a.m. It hasn't been that long.
That's true. Well, then have a wonderful morning, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. Can't wait to chat again.
And we are back. Thank you so much, Abbey and Liam, for everything that you shared and for the incredible work that you're doing out there. We're excited for continued and ongoing collaborations in whatever way we can find and just to support you in any way that we can. So
we just bought our plane tickets to Australia.
I wish.
So pull the futon out. We're on our way.
Someday.
Although it's about to be winter there. We'll see you in the summer.
A quick reminder to go check out Abbey and Liam's work. Links are in the podcast show notes. It's called The Evolving Love Project.
Next week.
Yeah, we don't have any other announcements.
No, there's nothing else happening this week. I mean, we're out and about. Nobody knows where we're at in the world, but we're out there.
We are. And next week, we have an interview with Jessica. We're really excited about this one as well, so come back in a week and listen.
Until then, we hope you all have a fantastic rest of this week and an amazing weekend. See you next week.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.